Good morning, everybody. This is the BG Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. I am Baxter Colburn, and joined for the first time in a long time in the studio is my good friend and colleague, Josh Scheibe. Good morning, Josh. How are you, sir?
Hi, Bax. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely, Josh. It has been almost a year since you have been in the BG studios.
Just about.
You are back. There's no gates to talk about this time. Last time you were here, you talked about Deflategate and the many crazy things that float around it, but now you're back, you're better than ever, and how's life been? It's been a year.
Yeah, a lot of things have happened this year. Graduated from college, started working on What's the Score with You and a couple of other things, acting during nights. Looking for a new vehicle at the moment. I just got into a car crash last week.
But you're okay, though?
I'm okay. Nobody was hurt.
Oh, good.
Car was totaled, but I'm okay.
Well, Josh Scheibe, you might need to start a GoFundMe campaign or something for Josh Scheibe's new car fund.
Not a bad idea.
You never know. Some people will give money for the craziest things, honestly. If they'll give them for like a new Fuzzy Pumper barbershop doll, I think they'll do it for a car for you, honestly. But Josh, I'm excited to have you here. We're going to chat a little bit about the sports world. Connor Christensen will be joining us as well in our second segment, so we all know that that's a good time when Connor decides to join the party as well. But for those of you can find us on Facebook at The BG Sports Show. You can find us on Twitter at BG Sports Show. You can find myself at Baxter Colburn. Josh, where can folks find you on Twitter?
I am at The Real Scheibe.
The Real Scheibe. Are there fake Scheibes out there?
I don't know, but I wanted to make sure that I got in ahead of them.
Fair enough. Nicely done, sir. And for those of you that enjoy listening to the show, you can find us on Sports Radio America. You can find us on demand on Spreaker, on iHeartRadio, on iTunes. I think that's it. It's been a while since I've had to say that. I think that's it's usually like 4,000 things, but I think that those are the important ones. iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and iTunes. Go ahead and download our podcast. Let us know your thoughts about it if you have any thoughts about it. And you can email the show at bgsportshow@gmail.com. All right, Josh. Well, first thing I want to chat with you about today, and we want to talk about in general in the sports world, is Cam Newton. He seems to be the focal point of so much discussion. His Panthers soundly destroyed the Arizona Cardinals this last weekend, and now they're going to the Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos, which is fantastic. I think Carolina hasn't seen this much success since Jake Delhomme was their quarterback, which was early 2000s, back when the Brady era was just beginning.
Right.
So gives you an idea of how long it's been. But talk a little bit, Josh, about Cam Newton and his effect on not only the Panthers but the NFL this year.
Well, people are questioning whether or not Cam's going to get the MVP this year, and I really do think he is going to be the MVP, because if there was ever an MVP season for Cam Newton, it would probably be this year.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they built their entire offense around him. He was largely the Panthers' offense. So I would, the MVP award should go to the most valuable player, not necessarily based on stats or anything like that. It's the value to the team and to the league overall. And looking at the Panthers season, it's amazing. It
is, absolutely. I mean, they go 15-1. One fun fact about Cam Newton as well is that he has only missed 2 regular season games. He hasn't started 2 regular season games because I believe he was out with injury last year since he came into the league back in 2011. So, you look at the records for the Carolina Panthers since Cam Newton's been in the league: 6-10, 7-9, 12-4, 5-8-1. 7-8-1 technically last year, and then 15-1. So Cam Newton overall is 45, 32-1 as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. But you talked about it. This season, Cam Newton, 35 passing touchdowns. He did throw 10 interceptions, but the interception rate, as long as it's under about 12 or 15, I think kind of just gets swept under the carpet. Folks don't really seem to care too much about that. So looking at it, though, from a playoff perspective, too, and you talked about it, Cam Newton, if you aren't an NFL starting quarterback, or if you're not an MVP candidate at this point, I don't know what is, because we were talking a little bit about this off the air as well, Josh, about what makes an MVP candidate, and the argument we always talk about, and as Packer fans too, as we know, is that, well, Aaron Rodgers had a similar season, but why is he not in the MVP conversation as well? But it's also due to the level of success with the team, and if you were to take away that player, would they still be the same? That whole debate goes back and forth. But do you think because of, even though Aaron Rodgers had a semi-similar season, that the reason he's not in the talk is because he's got so much more expected of him?
I think it's partially that, and I think also that if you take Rodgers away from the Packers, they wouldn't be as good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same could be said about the Panthers largely, but I think the Panthers still would have played better than the Packers if both of those quarterbacks had been removed.
Agreed.
I think the Panthers are a much stronger team than the Packers, even without Cam.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that one. Yeah,
which is tough to say, but
it is. It's tough to say,
it.
But at the same time, you need to realize that, hey, that's just wasn't. Yeah, looking at the numbers, Aaron Rodgers threw 31 touchdowns this year and 8 interceptions to Cam Newton, who had 35 and 10. So they pretty much level each other out. Aaron Rodgers threw for a little under 3,900 yards on the season. Cam Newton threw for just about the same as well. It's an interesting breakdown of the two, and this is just because we know, and I'm sure there's other quarterbacks out there too that had similar seasons, so don't think that we're trying to hone in. It's just the fact that this is someone close to home that we in the local media have heard the talks about Aaron Rodgers to Cam Newton, this, that, and the other. So what exactly is Cam Newton's effect on the NFL now?
Well, that's it's kind of hard to say. I mean, he's certainly he looks like the new breed of quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a good matchup in the Super Bowl versus Manning, because if you look at the Panthers' offense and how they're built, it's all built around Cam. If you look at the Broncos' offense, it's a very traditional offense. It's a very classic offense, which comes in large part based on how John Elway's draft picks have gone and how they've tried to build that team.
Absolutely.
But I think we're starting to see something new here with Cam Newton and even putting more focus on the quarterback as an all-around player instead of just as a passer. If you look at Cam Newton, boy, can he run.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the man is not exactly the smallest player in the world either.
That's true.
You look at his physical stats, too. I mean, he's 6'6", 260. I mean, if that's a linebacker, if that's a receiver, if that's anybody, they're going to get to where they're going to go. I mean, wherever they're looking to go, he's going to make it happen. It's kind of funny to think that he is only 26. I think he matured a lot this year, honestly. But it's interesting, like you mentioned, Josh, the new wave of quarterback. You look at the college scene, you hear about guys from Deshaun Watson at Clemson, even Jameis Winston when he just came into the league now, and Marcus Mariota as well, the 2 draft picks, the 2 big ones, this last year. That's the style that people want to play, but at the same time, maybe that has attributed to the college game as well, because you don't find a lot of college football programs that are successful that are the straight, laid-back Denver Broncos type of play.
That's very true.
All the kids nowadays growing up want to be that double, triple, quadruple threat. Somehow, if that's possible, they can be a kicker too, maybe, or something. But they want to get as many types of, they want to be able to throw the ball 80 yards in the air, and they want to be able to run a 4.3 40 at the same time and, be able to shake around a linebacker and stuff. But that just maybe makes for a more exciting product, and like you mentioned, maybe we are transitioning from the old way, the Mannings, the Favres, the Bradys, to the new almost hybrid of the, well, yes, I'm going to beat you on the ground for 100 yards by my feet, but I'm also going to throw for you. I'm going to throw for 350 plus on you and a couple of touchdowns. So when you look at this, though, with Cam Newton and everything that he's done, and I know this is incredibly early talk, but is Cam Newton, in your opinion, at this stage of his career, if Cam Newton were to retire tomorrow, would he be in the Hall of Fame?
Ooh, I think it's too early to say that. I think he's had a couple. I think that clearly this is his best season.
Yes.
I just don't think that his background, his last few seasons, would really support that. This is a great one.
Yes.
But I feel like this is the start of what could be a Hall of Fame career.
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. And I made the mention of this yesterday during a short Baxter's Drive Time that we do here on the BGS Sports Show as well. Yesterday, that I feel like this will be the greatest year of Cam Newton's career ever. There's no way he will ever be able to top this. He could maybe throw a few less interceptions if you want to look at it from a statistical standpoint, but everything that Cam Newton is doing this year, from getting the world hooked on dabbing to just literally looking like a middle school kid just having a ball on the playground every time he's out there, I don't feel like he's ever going to get back to this again. And that's not a dig against Cam. I think it's one of those moments where you're just literally living in the moment. The whole team is sucked into it, but this will be a different Carolina Panthers team next year. You might, if they go out and win, who's to say guys like Jared Allen on the defense maybe might hang it up. A few other guys that have been veterans on the team, they'd rather ride off in glory. But free agency's got a tricky thing of playing too, so there will never be this Cam Newton this Carolina Panthers team again.
That's very true. And, we have yet to see what's going to happen in this Super Bowl. It's going to be a very interesting game one way or another.
Absolutely.
But, the old saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. You have to wonder, is Cam going to get any better? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's certainly more likely that he's going to get worse.
That is very true. I mean, look at Peyton Manning.
Right.
You could even make an argument about Tom Brady this year, and I know all the Patriot lovers out there are saying it's the offensive line. Yeah, we get it, okay? Packer fans too. We understand, okay? But even still, offensive line or not, you still can get you are still in control of how quickly that ball gets out of your hand.
I think Cam kind of runs the risk sometimes of being a little too confident in his own abilities,
and
which is something that you hear a lot about him. He comes off as very arrogant. It seems like his ego is so big sometimes he had to build a guest house.
He's got the money for it.
The real Deflategate scandal was caused because he was in the locker room, inflating his ego.
Yeah.
But, I think it'd be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Super Bowl here.
It is, and I'm a little concerned too because of how well Denver played Tom Brady.
Yes.
Yes. And I know, once again, all the Patriot lovers out there saying the offensive line was garbage, we didn't have a running game, et cetera, et cetera. Well, even still, Brady had to throw the ball 56 times in that game. I think they hit Brady 20-plus times. I don't remember how many times he was sacked.
Yeah, he took a beating.
Brady was on his backside more than he was standing up for that game. And if I'm Denver, I'm going to try to take that same game plan, and I'm going to just flood Cam Newton in that backfield all game. Because if Cam Newton gets outside the pocket, or if he has time to throw, he is starting to get to that point where he's capable of doing that. But thankfully for Denver, they have a great outside pass rush with Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware. Even the secondary is not too bad. Their secondary is a little old with Aqib Talib and some of those other guys they've got back there. But this Denver defense as a whole, I own them in fantasy football this year. I know that they're a very good defense this year. They're the top-ranked defense. But also Carolina, we've seen Luke Kuechly step up, that middle linebacker. He's at interception after interception. Mm-hmm. Different guys are popping up each week for Carolina. I mean, they're kind of like, I feel like Carolina's defense has the makings to be that Seattle defense right before they became the Seattle defense kind of thing. It's like, hey, they've got some good young players, but we don't really know. And then suddenly it's like, boom, here is the here's the Seahawks defense kind of a thing. So, you can look at it from a lot of different perspectives, but at the end of the day, though, Carolina and Denver are headed to the Super Bowl. Cam Newton is having the year of his life. He'll probably, like we mentioned, take home the MVP award as well, but you never know. The football world's kind of crazy at times, too. We thought Peyton Manning had it his first year when he came back, and Adrian Peterson ended up winning it. So, it can go all different kinds of ways. But at the same time, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that deserves that MVP award, aside from Cam Newton.
No, neither can I.
All right. Well, we're going to step to a break. When we come back, Connor Christensen will be in studio to talk about what else but the Minnesota Vikings. You're listening to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. Welcome back to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I am Baxter Colburn, joined in studio by Josh Scheibe. And now, of course, the man that we all love. Women adore him. Men wish they could be him, except that they realize that he's a Vikings fan. But we still love him. It's Connor Christensen. Good morning, Connor. How are you this morning?
I'm doing really well. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Doing okay.
Well. So, Connor, the Minnesota Vikings, not exactly the most glorious end of their season, but they still made the playoffs, which is the prediction everybody had for them going into the season. So, aside from the Blair Welsh missed field goal, aside from how the season ended.
Okay, I've got stuff to talk about.
We'll get to that in a second.
We'll
get to that in a second, but I want to know what your thoughts are about the season as a whole, from what the hype was beginning of the year. Will we make it? We made it. So as you're a Vikings fan, putting it in your nice little Viking season bag and carrying it home. What are your thoughts about how the season started to where it ended?
Yeah, I would just like to point out that if you go way back in episodes of BG Sports Show episodes, way back to before the season.
Sure.
I was not sold on Teddy Bridgewater yet.
That's right, you were not.
I was his biggest skeptic, while everybody else around me was talking about his potential and how he was going to do really well. And I was like, well, guys, he hasn't proved himself yet. And then I also said that Adrian Peterson was going to come back and have a great year.
That's true, you did.
So both of those things happened where Teddy I'm not going to say I'm extraordinarily disappointed with Teddy, because I kind of figured this would happen, and he hasn't had a role model on the team to kind of teach him how to be a pro football.
Still going 11-5 though.
Yes,
not bad.
I would I'll grant that more to the defense more than anything else on this team. Even Adrian Peterson, that defense was stellar this year.
Absolutely.
The games they lost were because the defense wasn't there.
Oh, I 100% agree with you on that one. Yeah, I mean, you look at the score lines in some of these games. They lost opening night to the San Francisco 49ers, which I think was a bit of a fluke.
Yeah, absolutely. The team didn't have any cohesion
They
yet.
lose 20-3. Then they go to Denver and almost upset the Broncos. They lose 23-20 there. They lost to the Packers 30-13. They lost to the Seahawks, which was just deadly, 38-7. They lost to Arizona as well, 23-20, and then they just lost in the playoffs 10-9. So you look at those two games there where they lost by 3 or less points. Those are against two of the best teams in the NFL.
Absolutely.
So that gives you almost a skewed-ish version of what exactly Minnesota is this year. I mean, they finished 11-5, so on paper that's good. That's a good record.
It is.
I feel like if you finish 10-6 or lower, it's like, look, we could have been better. But I think 11-5 plus is like, we had a pretty good year overall.
Pretty good season.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say Coach Zimmer has done a fantastic job of taking not very good team and is starting to make them something.
Yes.
In his 2 years, we can clearly see a progression of Vikings play in the NFL
Definitely.
just as a whole. And I would just say that all said and done, I am extraordinarily proud of the way the Vikings played this season. I think that they are a few good players away from being extraordinarily dangerous in the NFL.
And I've asked you that question a few times throughout the year, and I know that the three of us have chatted about that as well. But, we've always asked, what is Minnesota missing? Because you have asked us that too. Hey, if the Packers had had a better player there, if they didn't have to play a rookie cornerback, would they have done better? And so I'll ask you that question too. What's on Minnesota's checklist then going into this offseason?
Most of it is, I would say, focused on Teddy, because the offensive line issues will be hopefully resolved when Phil Lodeholt, which is a mouthful, and John Sullivan both come back to play. And John Sullivan is a dominant center. He's been very, very good for the Vikings his entire career. And Lodeholt he's been extraordinarily good for the Vikings, run block, pass block, you name it, he can do it. And then Joe Berger stepped out this season as someone who can
a bit of a ham this year.
Yeah, well, and he's thank
Sorry.
you. Yeah, it took me a second.
It's like nothing? Nobody? Okay. I'm a bad person. I'll stop.
No. He stepped out as someone who can really step up and be that clutch offensive line player that the Vikings needed. Matt Khalil continues to disappoint. He had a really, really good year a couple of years back, and the Vikings expected good things from him, and then he has been pretty much quiet for the past 2 or 3 years now. But I would say that working on Teddy, on his form, because his release is very low. His form is not quite perfect yet, and he needs to.
We saw against the Seattle Seahawks too, there were a few times where he was throwing that ball like he was trying to pitch a down and away strike. I'm like, Teddy, you gotta get it up just a little bit, bud.
He's not overly tall, so having a low release automatic,
right? Basically trying to take their ankles out,
pretty much. And we've seen him miss throws, and I think that's largely due to his comfort level in the pocket. I mean, again, the offensive line did not play well entire season due to injury and whatever else. And so that will hopefully be better next season. But, there's only so much blame you can give the offensive line. When it comes down to it, as you guys talked about earlier with Tom Brady and, all of that, the quarterback is still in the most amount of control when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
So I think the Vikings could pick up a couple more receivers.
Which is interesting, too. I don't want to cut you off, but I'm curious about that, too, because we saw Stephon Diggs kind of come out super hot and then kind of realized that he was a rookie and then got a little tired. But even then, Cordell Patterson, too, targeted twice, 2 catches on the year. Mike Wallace targeted 72 times, only had 39 catches. Jarius Wright targeted 50 times, 34 catches. Kyle Rudolph, once again, 73 targets, 49 catches. So
Kyle Rudolph was also injured.
Yes, he was. You're right. But even still, though, I mean, they've got the makings of a good young receiving core. But
absolutely,
you mentioned though finding maybe 1 or 2 other receivers, whether you draft one, maybe go sign a mid-range veteran, see if that might help as well.
Yeah,
I think you do need someone like that because Mike Wallace, I think, abused what he got in Minnesota. I don't think he put it into practice because he could have been a great mentor to some of these young guys, and maybe he still could. But I feel like when he came in, there was all this hype around him, and that he didn't really have a great year.
No, he really did not. It was fairly disappointing as a fan.
Sure.
You expected more from him because of the way that he's played previous, especially with the Steelers. But we know that he is good. He is very fast. He has good hands, and has not really done anything. That being said, I think the Diggs-Bridgewater combination has shown to be the most to have the most chemistry between any of the passing catching duos on the team. I think that one has shown to be the most promising,
and I think fans like that the most too.
Absolutely, we've seen Stephon Diggs make some crazy catches, and I think personally he's going to be the number 1 receiver for a while now.
I think if he grows into his body a little bit more, yes. I don't see why he wouldn't be.
Because not taking anything away from Wallace, he's a very good receiver, but he didn't do anything. He hasn't proved that he's the number 1.
Yes.
In my mind.
No, not at all. At least not in Minnesota, he hasn't.
Charles Johnson is still a good receiver, and I think that he can be a good receiver.
Yeah.
And I think that he, this season was kind of revealing for just how overhyped he was. What was that? 2 seasons ago, 2 seasons ago.
Well, it was the end of last season, going into this season.
Right, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yep.
And he was being very, he was targeted a lot, he was catching the ball a lot, he was doing really well, and then this season happens and he was not targeted as much. And but I do expect more from him further on, and I think Jarius Wright needs to just go away.
That's the thing, you've said that about him too, but he still managed to do enough to be consistent. I mean, yes, he only had what did he have? He had 442 receiving yards on the year. He didn't catch a touchdown, but he still averaged 13 yards a catch, though, which is not bad for a receiver on your team.
No, that is true. They like Teddy's really good with the short throws and let his receivers make plays afterwards. And I think that he's consistent enough to stay with the team, but I don't think he's very good.
Well, the question, there's a difference between being consistent and being effective.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
You have to question whether he's actually being effective on the team.
I would agree with you. And I do. I've never been a Wright fan personally.
First guy we cut in Madden every time.
Very true. And so I think if they got rid of him, that would be just fine with me. Go pick up a
It'd be just right if they did that.
Good one.
Sorry.
And they really need to figure out something with Cordell Patterson because I think his special teams ability is enough to keep him on the team. But I would love to see him develop as a receiver.
I feel like he'd be a good slot receiver. I mean, I know he's a little bit taller, but at the same time, though, he is fast. And we saw that. Yes. I mean, he had 2 kick returns for touchdowns this year. He helped in the punt return game a little bit, but that was more so Marcus Sherrills as well that did more of the returning this year for the punt return game. But, you look at the Vikings as a whole, I think Cordell Patterson could find a home in the slot or just a little bit more training and coaching, which I think Zimmer wants to do with him. I don't think you want to cut somebody like that loose.
No, absolutely
because
not.
If he gets on the right team with the right coach anywhere and he ends up blowing up as a star, Vikings are sitting here going, well, crap, why did we let him go, And obviously there's a certain level of hype to what they actually do, so you need to be careful.
That absolutely.
But I feel like we've seen enough from him that he could be a great receiver.
I agree. I think they need to work on his route running, and they need to work on his catching ability. But,
Absolutely.
If they figure that out with him, he could be very, very dangerous in the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
We've seen his ability to elude, and his ability his speed is just ridiculous. So I think he's worth holding on to and developing more.
Fair enough. All right, well, we're going to jump to a break. When we come back, Connor's going to hang out with us, and we're going to chat about something that Mike McCarthy said recently about his boss, Ted Thompson. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be back with more on the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America, right after this. Welcome back to the BG Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I am Baxter Colburn, joined by Josh Scheibe. Josh, you having a good time so far, sir?
I am.
That's good. You haven't run screaming from the studio yet, so I must be doing something right. I must be a fairly good co-host to you.
I am enjoying it so far.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, we talked before we went to a break about something interesting, and I feel like you should lead the fans back into what we're going to talk about. We do have Connor Christensen here as well, too, so we can get a different outside perspective from a non-Packer fan.
All right. Well, this past week, a bit of a bombshell was dropped here in Wisconsin. Sounds like Mike McCarthy and Ted Thompson are having some issues. McCarthy is not happy at all with what Ted Thompson has been doing as GM on the Packers.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's an article that came out at NFL.com and multiple different sources, too, saying that according to several sources, McCarthy is fed up with his boss's unwillingness to take a chance and reinforce their roster with veteran players that might be unknown to the Packers, but have the talent to contribute.
Yeah, it's not just the weather that's getting icy up here.
Exactly, yeah, and I think this has been a long time coming as well, and Josh, I'm curious to get your thoughts about this.
Well, I would love to see McCarthy stay for at least another season or two, because he and Aaron Rodgers do have a really good relationship, which
Absolutely.
we mentioned a bit when we were talking during the break. Thinking about Ted Thompson, though, it's, I think that his time in Green Bay may be past, or should be past, because he really seems more like a glorified scout these days.
He does.
And a barely glorified scout.
I mean, he's good at what he does.
Absolutely. He's great at seeing the talent in these young guys and training them up. But he really doesn't do much post-draft. It seems to me like he thinks his job is done once the draft is over, not even really paying attention to anybody in the free agent market.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. The best version of what he's done in the free agent market recently has been Julius Peppers, which I think we can all agree was a great signing, something that I feel like Julius might find himself in the Packers Hall of Fame in a few years, too, after he's done retiring.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
He was a Panther. Yes, he was a Bear as well. But I think the impact that he's had in Green Bay will be a forever lasting one that folks might remember. But looking at it, though, you look at the aspect of, well, every time McCarthy and Ted Thompson are feuding, if that is an actual feud, Ted is still Mike's boss at the end of the day.
True.
So
that's true.
Ted could say, I don't know if Ted would go this route, but Ted could say, well, look, if you don't agree with me, you can leave.
That's true.
I doubt Ted Thompson, and I don't know him well enough, obviously, to say, you know what, maybe I am hurting the team, or maybe I will just go to helping us develop scouts, or maybe I'll go do this within the organization. Still keep him there because he's a very good employee, from an overall organization standpoint. But in the position that he's in, I think he has done more harm than good for going out and signing free agents. Because you always see the articles, and as someone that wrote articles on this, 5 prospects the Packers should go out and sign, or 10 prospects the Packers need to sign this year. And, as you get your article assignment as a writer, and you're like, this isn't, no one's going to read this because they're not going to sign anybody. But I still click on the articles nowadays when I see them because I'm always like, in an alternate universe.
Right.
Who would they sign? So the biggest rumor this year is Doug Martin from Tampa Bay, which I think they should do, but that's neither here nor there. So, but Connor, as an outsider looking in, what do you feel? Because I know you were pretty good with Minnesota, with everyone that your organizational standpoint seems to be
Thank you.
Pretty sound.
Yeah.
But looking in, and you've been around enough Packer fans in the organization long enough that you've probably developed your own thoughts and feelings about Ted Thompson, Mike McCarthy, etc.
I'm more familiar with McCarthy than I am Ted Thompson, but I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say. When the Packers brought in Julius Peppers, he's done very, very well for the Packers, and I remember when that happened. All of my Packer fan friends were like, "Oh my goodness, we signed somebody. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, he's a great player, so why not?"
Well, it's funny because the big news wasn't, we just signed somebody who used to be a Bear. It was, we signed somebody.
Yeah. Exactly. And then you just said bringing in Doug Martin, and I think he's way better than Feast Mode. And Starks has been
Hamburglar
has been consistently disappointing. But so bringing in Doug Martin would be, go for that. That would be the best run game you guys have had in a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, probably since I'm on green.
That's true. I would agree with you on that one. And I'm looking at some of the other potential targets, too. A lot of receivers are being rumored, too. Travis Benjamin is one of them out of Carolina.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Travis Benjamin is one of them. Percy Harvin is another rumored one. Reuben Randall, another. And Jermaine Kearse, Mohamed Sanu, Anquan Bolden. James Jones is technically a free agent. More than likely they will re-sign him, though.
I think that would be smart to bring him back.
I would assume. I don't know why they wouldn't, at the same cost.
I've actually heard Greg Jennings rumored as possibly coming back.
Do you think because of how well that they saw things happen with James Jones this year that they might be looking at Greg Jennings and saying, look, maybe? Because he didn't really do much.
I was going to say, I wouldn't say that James Jones really did all that well after those first couple of games where he looked like the team's savior. Had a great couple of games, but I don't know. It's hard to say because Jennings was very good.
He was.
He had a great rapport with Brett Favre, and even better, I think, with Aaron Rodgers. So it's hard to say.
Well, I think don't forget that Jordy Nelson is coming back next
year.
year.
That's true.
So I mean, you guys don't want to go out and bring back all of your old veteran receivers at this point because then you'll have, how many on the roster and all of this stuff. And Jordy Nelson is still going to be the number one because he's still way better than any other receiver on the Packers.
I do think we have some young guys on the team who might actually be able to get trained up pretty well. I think Jeff Janis really showed something in that last game.
I agree.
And I think if Aberdarius can stay on the field and not get injured on his first play the next season, he may actually grab a few of those a few passes.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking here at another article that was written by Forbes, and this is what I was looking for. I was looking for actual real players here. Vernon Davis is another one that would be a good guy. He's a free agent again because he only signed a one-year deal with Denver. But I also could see Davis being that guy that wins the Super Bowl and then retires if they were to do that because he's been around long enough. But get Vernon Davis in for a year or two, let him work with Corliss, let him work with Richard Rodgers. That's, huge right there for the Packers as a whole. Matt Forte, another guy that we had talked about a while ago as being another good guy that would be rumored. Doesn't cost very much either. Von Miller.
Ooh.
Denver Broncos outside linebacker.
Yes.
Von Miller, Clay Matthews. Sandwiching people in the middle.
After Von Miller just terrorized Tom Brady.
Yeah. Exactly. Antonio Gates, and then Terrence Knighton as well. He's a defensive tackle for the Redskins. So those are 5 good players. I mean, obviously, if Green Bay went out and signed all 5 of those players, I would be forever, grateful. But even still, I would. Oh my goodness! If it comes down to the whole classic case of if you got to sign one, I would rather Von Miller out of any of those guys.
Yeah, if he's available, absolutely. Well, would you go with him or would you go with a run game?
I'd rather go for Von Miller because I trust, as much as I would probably still swear at the run game, I would trust it more so if I knew we had a great defense.
Did you hear the news with Eddie Lacy?
That he's trying to train with the P90X trainer?
Yeah. Tony Horton is going to train up feast modes, help him drop some weight and get back in shape.
That would be nice.
That'd be good. Lacey's got a lot of potential. The guy's some cross between a bowling ball and a pinball.
Exactly, and that's why I'm not 100% ready to just be like, all right, he's done.
Let's toss him out.
Yeah. So I think if he does what he's going to say he's going to do, we go out and we draft one more running back like we do every year, which is fine. Or maybe we can go out and sign some low whatever guy just to add some depth. That's great. But I would much rather, if I had to pick one out of these 5, I would rather Von Miller come in, even though I'm sure Denver is going to give him a nice, huge, fat paycheck. I don't know why they'd let him walk. I don't know why any team would let Von Miller walk. No. You can still look at the overall possibility, of it maybe happening.
I would agree with that choice because if we can shore up the defense, and get Lacey and Starks if he's going to keep playing for the Packers.
Yeah, if Richard Rodgers and Corliss can stay healthy, but also prove that they can be a little bit more consistent.
Right.
Yes, an Antonio Gates. Yes, a Vernon Davis would be great. But at the same time, we don't need to go and spend a ton of money on them. If we had to spend a ton of money on one player, I'd rather it be Von Miller, personally. And there's tons of other guys out there too. But just through these 5 on this article, I was like, yeah, this is who I would want.
I think the Packers have always been good enough offensively. Like this season was kind of a lull for them offensively. But,
it was,
but I mean, we see promise in Richard Rodgers. I think he's stepping up to be that receiving. Tight end. So I don't know if you necessarily need the Vernon Davis or you need Antonio Gates or all those other people. They'd be nice to have, but the defense is what needs work from an outsider looking in. It's the defense that seems to be slipping up because you need to get some pressure off Clay Matthews so that he can be a playmaker again.
Yeah, I was going to say as good as Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers are together, if they can't do everything.
No, and BJ Raji is not doing.
I've never been a huge BJ Raji fan, honestly. Yeah. I mean, some people swear by him, but
yeah. And so you were talking about the D tackle from the Redskins, whose name I've already forgotten.
Terrence somebody. I'll see if I can find him again.
And if he's at least a Raji level, D tackle, then he could be very valuable as well to the defense.
Absolutely.
Because you don't need someone. You don't. I mean, obviously Von Miller would be the better choice. But if you can't get Von Miller, then you need. I think more on the line is what.
I agree.
What the Packers do.
I agree. I mean, these are just a few names that I'm throwing out here too. But other guys that are going to be free agents this year. Eric Weddle. And he wants to be done. He wants to leave San Diego. We saw that. We saw that because that they're potentially moving to wherever, San Diego, Los Angeles, or not out of San Diego.
What is I forget.
Wherever that they're possibly moving to, he made it very well known that he does not want to be back next year. He wants to go to a new team. He's a dynamic free safety. Yes, he is 31. Yes, he would cost somebody a good amount of cash, but still be another guy, though. If you're looking for a safety, get him in. Von Miller, as we mentioned. Halatoy Nagata from Detroit. He would be another good guy to get. Eric Berry, the free safety out of Kansas City, who overcame cancer this year. Normally, I'd say yes to Jason Pierre-Paul, but not with the season that he's had. All Fingergate and everything. Chad Greenway is a guy that's free this year. Justin Tuck, Tamba Hali. These are just guys on the defensive side. Nick Fairley down in St. Louis. Charles Woodson, but he's retiring.
Yeah. And I wouldn't expect Greenway to go anywhere. He wants to stick with the Vikings for at least another season.
Terrence Knighton was the name, by the way, the D tackle out of Washington. So there are a lot of good players as I look around the free agent list right now that will be available. Some very expensive, some not so much. As I mentioned, Doug Martin is another guy too that's hanging around towards the bottom of this list here. That in terms of how much he might cost somebody. So, it all depends on what the Packers want to go for. So, but overall, going back to this McCarthy Thompson thing real fast before we wrap things up. Is it going to be something that we see addressed maybe in this free agent market? Do you think we see Ted Thompson just kind of appease folks and maybe sign one or two people just to shut people up? Or does he say, look, I'm Ted Thompson. I'm going to go draft a bunch of people and stick it to everybody like I do every year?
I would like to see him sign some people. Though you got a question, are you looking at immediate results or are you looking for something farther down the line? 'Cause that's what Thompson is good at is big picture, 3-4 seasons from now, once we've trained these guys up. And, I would like to see something a little more immediate because I think they have, if you sign a couple of guys and really shore up that defense or maybe add some depth to the backs, the halfbacks, I think we could have a Super Bowl team next season if we do sign a couple of these guys.
I agree. One thing that I noticed here fast, too, as I was flying through the free agent list is that the dynamic cornerback for the Carolina Panthers, Josh Norman, is a free agent this year.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. But more than likely.
Yeah, the Panthers would be crazy.
More than likely. My first thought was like Packers, and my second thought was like, oh shoot, Seattle's going to sign him. Like that was my first. That was my first thought. But that's neither here nor there. Connor, what are your thoughts about this?
I think that yes, we can look long term, 3-4 seasons down the road. But I think if Thompson decides to go out and sign somebody, that 3-4 seasons down the road kind of becomes a 1 to 2 seasons down the road. Because even if he signs one or two guys just to help the defense as a whole, because I'm instantly thinking of Chad Greenway on the Vikings because he has been such a leader for the Vikings. When he's not there, the whole team suffers. Like offense and 100%, defense.
Yep.
So I think bringing in a player like that who can do that and like bring the defense as a whole together. Those are the important players that you look for, and I think bringing in some people, outside the organization to come in kind of helps.
Absolutely.
Even develop positions that are not their own.
Yeah, and the other question becomes, well, if Ted Thompson is on his way out, do we have time to train up those guys for 3 or 4 years before we can expect a good team?
That is true. So. I don't know. That's the great thing about football, though, is that everybody like us gets to just sit here and talk about it. That's why they play the game, as my former co-host Sam Wallace would say. So, well, thank you so much for everybody for listening. You have been listening to another edition of the BG Sports Show. Special thanks to Connor Christensen for stopping by today and offering some Vikings and just general football insight. Mr. Scheibe, you made it. How do you feel? You're a show in the bag.
I feel good. I think I made my team happy. I got through the whole thing.
Okay.
I think my performance was pretty good.
Fair enough. All right. Well, Mr. Scheibe, where can folks find you on Twitter?
They can find me at TheRealScheibe.
All right. And you can find the show on Twitter at BG Sports Show. You can find myself at Baxter Colburn. On Facebook, we are The BG Sports Show. And if you ever want to email us, you can email us at thebgsportshow@gmail.com. You can listen to us on demand on Spreaker, on iHeartRadio, and on iTunes as well. Download our podcast. Give us a review if you'd be so kind. For everyone here at the BG Sports Show, I am Baxter Colburn. He's been Josh Scheibe. Once again, special thanks to Connor Christensen. We'll see you all again next time on the BG Sports Show. Enjoy your day, everyone.